Right, good morning. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. Today we'll be discussing the operations of ANPR. We'll go a little bit into details to assist you guys to configure things, just the basic information. And then after that, we'll have the Q&A. And then after that, I'll have a little bit for those guys that would like to stay a little bit longer to just showcase a bit more very technical details, just to assist where some of questions were brought to my attention before. All right, so let's get into it and let's get started. So first of all, as you guys can see, this is a wonderful city area for ANPR to work. Everything is clean and the taxis are not on the pavement. So please take note of that. Okay. Let's move along. Next slide. I'm not going. Don't do this to me today. There we go. Right. As you guys can see for the introduction, first of all, as you guys can see, number one is the freeway. Everybody keeps to the left. And as you can see, number two, all the trucks are staying on their side of the lane at the end, so to keep the fast lane open for the guys that are late for work. So besides all of that, okay, anyway, jokes aside, so let's move along. Right, first of all, obviously, as we discussed last week, we've got quite a few different models of ANPR cameras. So this is just a brief introduction again, just to say the differences. So obviously we have our deep learning algorithm models, which are these ones. And then obviously we also have the ones for the traffic control type of ones that we have a little bit heavy duty. This one, the picture looks a little bit different. But obviously, as you guys know, there are a newer model for this with the built-in radar at the bottom. So that is more accurate. And I'm busy trying to set up one at our office as a demonstration as well. And then we have the normal ones that you guys are used to. Those are the ANPRs that we are using at the robot areas with those little mushrooms for the picking up the number plates that are flagged, and also for shopping malls and for entrances of complex and stuff like that, just to take the snapshot. Moving along. As you guys know, there's quite a bit of different features that we do have on these devices, from the dual mode to, just authentication of the number plate and all sorts of little goodies involved with that. Right. So with the ANPR camera, that's our automatic number plate recognition system. So that's on those cameras itself, our deep learning algorithm. So with that is for normal road use, and obviously also for normal entrance and exit. So here's just a little video. Let's hope that everything plays nicely. So the vehicle will come past. There we go. Okay, the videos are obviously slow, and it will pick up the number plate and then obviously let you know in real time that the number plate is there. Okay. So very straightforward. Once you set up that, you can have it either, like I mentioned, for a roadway, or you can have it for an entry exit at a mall area. So this makes it a lot easier to keep control, and we'll go through that just now. So number one is obviously we want to have less misreads. So this gives us the capability of using our deep learning algorithm to be able to concentrate more on the region of the number plates itself. So this is very important. I will go through a little bit later regarding all those type of things, but the region is very important. So when you do receive the camera, make sure that you update the firmware to the latest African firmware. That will be concentrating more on the South African registrations than the European and all the other countries. Right. And then secondly is obviously to make sure that you'll set up everything correctly, so you don't have those kind of misreads where it concentrates more on the stickers instead of the number plate. All right, so very straightforward, very easy. Then the next one is obviously with our deep learning algorithm, we can also see and use the correct firmware for that correct model in real time to be able to showcase us the number plate, but not just the number plate, also what type of vehicle it is, what the color of the vehicle is, which direction the vehicle is going in, and whatever other information that you need. So it depends on how you do the setup, depends on the angle, depends on the model and the firmware. So those are things that are very important to always keep in mind to consider. I know a few guys are battling a little bit with ANPR, but they are very easy solutions. And very soon we'll have a little bit more technical video of setup that will be available on our YouTube channel as well, that we'll be doing to showcase on the first generation, the second generation, and obviously the ones with the radar as well, to make it a bit easier for you guys. So it will detect the vehicle and pull it in, and you can also use that smart display. So on the newer models, you'll have the smart display. On the older ones, it will be under configure, and then at the bottom, but we'll go through that as well. But this is just to showcase a little bit about the information that it will give you. Right, next up is obviously, this is not really important, but we can obviously read multiple different countries' number plates. But like I mentioned to you earlier, the best is to make sure that your firmware of your camera is up to date, and it's the African latest firmware. We will try, and I'll push for them to also add that material into the normal site that we have our material, to have the link there as well for the latest firmware for ANPR models. So that is also available. If you guys are still struggling, you can speak to your supplier, or you can speak to our call center to assist with getting the latest version of that firmware. So that is definitely easier to get now, and we're definitely concentrating on that a lot more. Right, so it will pick up the region of where that vehicle is and give you the information, and also give you the direction of where it's going. Right, on the application side, for South Africa, mostly our cameras are used for access control. So that will be for entrance at a mall. So it will take your number plate, detect that there is a vehicle at the entrance. So you don't have to push that no touchpad, or press a button, or whatever the case is. It will automatically open because it picks up your number plate and grants you access. So for complex areas as well, that's very nice to use. Instead of using, again, fingerprints or any other way of QR code scans or whatever the case is, you can use your number plate of your vehicle. Once you drive towards the boom, it will pick it up and it will automatically open and allow you in. Parking areas can be used as well, but also we use that a lot on our South African roads, whether it's by our intersections of our robots, or on gravel roads for different companies that we partnership up with, that monitors the registrations and flags them if they are listed or case number towards it. Okay, so we have a few different methods that we can use. So first of all, we can have the camera stand alone, but also taken to an NVR. So for those guys that are not sure about standalone, it means basically if you just have the camera and maybe it's a remote area where you have a nano station shooting at a sector, or maybe to an ISP company, then you can also still pull it into your NVR. So that connection depends on what your application is, but that can be done. And I've done quite a few of those as well. So we have different NVRs that we can be using from our I series, and also to our deep learning algorithm, our AI NVRs itself are very advanced and have all the latest firmware on it. So, and if it's not updated, the best is to update that as well. Next up is obviously we can also take it to our VMS. That will be for HIK-Central itself. So you can take your ANPR camera through your switch to your software, and to make life a little bit easier, to have more control. Or you can even have it both ways. You can take it from the camera to your NVR and then to your IVMS or your VMS itself. So it gives you that capability. Right, so very straightforward, very easy. It's the same as loading a camera. I don't think there's much towards that. Then on the configuration side, this is very important, where a few of the guys are making this type of mistakes. They think that the default way of setting things for each ANPR camera, they can just set the basic things that they know, and then they leave it, and then that's it. The camera is working. It's not the case. So each environment is different, each curve, each degree angle of the road, that will be the degree angle of the road, each height of each camera installation, the sunlight also plays a role, maybe the shadows of the trees. There's so much more for that environment that will play a role. So each one needs to be set accordingly. That's number one. Number two is obviously we need to make sure that whatever we set it up for the day or night, black or white. Obviously, if the camera is in black and white, it's even more accurate compared to color. The aim is obviously, like I mentioned last week, the ANPR camera is designed to pick up number plates. It's not always, you can, if you are low on your budget, to use it as an overview and as an ANPR, but it's designed as obviously just to pick up number plates. So if you want overview, you can add additional cameras, but if you only want to concentrate on the number plate space, is to keep it for that use. There's different ways that you can set. You need to play around, obviously, like I mentioned, and then there's different shutter speed. The shutter speed is very important that a lot of people is not aware of. So that's the amount of time the camera takes a snapshot to be able to make sure of the speed of the object that's going past. So if the object is going too fast past it, it's not going to see that. A lot of the guys are used to this setup, especially when it comes to indoors with the lighting area. Then we use this capability we use this capability to change that kind of shutter speed to control the light environment. Sometimes my webcam does that little funny things because the lights here are too much. So that is definitely something to look at. And I will go through that a little bit later when we are done with the video. So for different speed, you can play around. Like I mentioned, this is just a general point of reference. So if it's maybe 30 kilometers, so which means it's a complex area, then you might need to set it like from 1 to 50 or 1 to 200. So you need to play around. If it's a little bit faster, maybe for a normal suburban area of road for the community, then you'll obviously increase it. If it's for a higher speed, then you need to consider the model as well that makes sure that it can handle it. And that's more for the traffic control cameras that we have. They're like the little baby that I was rubbing last week. Maybe look at that one with the radar, because that's more designed for that kind of application. Not saying that these models can't, they can, but it takes a lot of time to configure and play around, test. So it needs to be done correctly. Right. Then next one is on our focus mode. You best is to have it onto semi-focus, because a lot of objects might fly close to it and it sets out the focus. Then it needs to set in the focus before it can take the snapshot. So make sure that it's on semi-focus itself. Right. Next one is your WDR. Make sure that all that is off. You don't need that. When it comes to just the number plate itself, you don't need that option. Certain environments, especially for shopping malls or underground parking, those are things that might be considered. So you could look at that. Like I said, have a look at your different application and see where you might need to play around with the settings to get it into where your percentage needs to be. Next one is obviously to make sure that whatever the display is set at, either normal, your backlight, maybe front light is a bit more, whatever the case is, keep it in normal. Once it is in normal, you'll have a normal environment to work with. Very importantly, I'll go a little bit down that as well, is the degree of the camera itself, the height, and then whatever the length is itself, the distance from where the camera is to where the vehicle needs to read. Those things are very important. And not just that, also that degree angle. Sorry, I've got a monitor behind me, so I can't see everything here as I'm discussing it. So that degree angle of what the camera needs to be is very important. So it depends on the height, depends on the distance where your trigger line is that you program to make sure that you get the most accurate read itself of the camera. There are different angles. and you can really push it to its limits and it can still pick up. But again, like I said, the configuration is to be done almost like a calibration. You need to really sit and do your homework and really play around with the settings to make sure you get the best results for your environment. The more you do that and the more ANPR cameras you set up in different environments, the quicker and easier it's going to start getting for you because you're more familiar with it. Okay. Next up is obviously the picture itself to make sure that whatever the background is, if you're just focusing on the license plates and vehicles, those settings depends on your application. Whatever the text is for the overlay that you need for that information, you can change that as well. You can change the quality if you need to. You're just basically focusing on the number plate and stuff like that. Not just that, also there are different also settings on the image as well that you can play around, not just the image, the recording itself, to make sure that you maybe push it up to 25 frames per second and make sure you get the best quality out of your ANPR. That will give you a better quality of image as well. Okay, so on your road traffic itself, once you've enabled your ANPR, you have two options, either mixed traffic or just vehicle detection. Mixed traffic is for normally for number plates and whatever other vehicles you pick up, it will carry on. Your vehicle detection itself will just detect that the vehicle is there and then take through the snapshot. So as you guys can see, you have the normal way of doing things. You have this border line. Once you have that borderline, that's you telling the camera that it needs to focus for the number plate in this specific area. Then we have our blue line. That's when the vehicle crosses the blue line and it will take those little snapshots and put it together and give you the different output of that number plate. So a lot of the guys have different models. You have a 1 line, you have a 2 line, 4 line, 7 line, depends on which region or whatever the case is, what model you have, but there are different options for that. Then the next one is region. A lot of the guys are still using the European. If you have updated your firmware, it will say Africa. If it's Africa, you've got a better one, but there's obviously different versions. So make sure that you've got the latest version of firmware for that. Next one is obviously just your normal ANPR settings. And then basically you need to make sure that you save it. Right, so very straightforward on that one. Next up is a very long list. Is obviously for the ANPR cameras, the area of the environment. So you can pull the degree angles, and we'll go through that a little bit later, more technical, but you can set up this itself. Make sure that your blue line is detecting the vehicle. So a lot of the guys are putting in the ANPR cameras and trying to just get the back end of the vehicle. It's obviously more accurate when you have the front face of the vehicle, because the vehicle's traveling towards the camera. So a lot of the guys get confused with that as well. So let's say, as example, this is a road. I don't have the correct picture, but let's just imagine this is a road. The vehicle's on its way towards the blue line, going from the top to the bottom. It's going towards the blue line. You need to allow the camera to see that the vehicle's on its way. And then it needs to cross the vehicle and then exit the line. This way, you're allowing the camera to be able to identify that the object has entered my field of view, it's crossed my secure line, and it's exit that secure line and it's busy leaving the field of view. That gives you a much better clarity of information towards the camera to be able to take better quality and be more accurate towards what it's doing for its job. It's the same as the AccuSense lines. They work the same way. The camera needs to be able to see the object before it crosses the area or crosses the line or enters the area. The camera needs to see the device first for more accuracy, less false alarms and less misreads and stuff like that. Right, next one is our modes. We have obviously the entry exit city, and then obviously for alarm notification that you can also change that settings as well. So for the ANPR itself, its goal is obviously to send you the number plates. You can link it to any third-party program, which we've done with multiple different companies. One of the popular ones are Sniper. Their polls are up with a lot of places. All those little robot intersections with the little mushrooms, with the cameras around them. There are ANPR cameras in between at the robots to be proactive in our security environment for our communities. So once the SAPS has uploaded a registration or flagged a registration with a case number for maybe ATM fraud or maybe armed robbery or whatever the case might be, if that vehicle crosses that robot area and the camera picks it up, it will inform that security company that's involved with that section of or that environment area, and it will send out the response team that's in charge of that recovery or that response itself. Again, being very proactive, this is helping a lot in the security industry. So quite a lot of information there. Right, next up is the linkage side of things. So obviously, a lot of the times people might need to have different reads. So we don't want to grant access maybe for a parking area for a shopping mall. So then you can say, okay, the mall only opens at 8 o'clock and the mall closes, let's say, at 6 o'clock. So then you can say that it needs to be your normal time schedule, and then the rest is obviously. So you have that capability of putting your time schedule in, your arming schedule to make sure. And then the next one is obviously our linkage itself. So very importantly, we can see the vehicle going forward or seeing the vehicle reversing. That's actually going backwards. So that's when you're just concentrating on the back plate. So you have that push notification. So you can either send an email or have it through eConnect or whatever the case might be. You have that capability. And you can also trigger. So you have two, A and A2 for alarm triggers. So that's where you connect up the wires itself to maybe for boom gate. So once it picks up the vehicle and it's on the list, then it will open up the boom. It will trigger that output itself on the camera. The ANPR cameras do have built-in relays. So keep that also in mind. It's not just a normal dry contact, it's a relay itself, and you can change that and set up the configuration that will be under your arming schedule itself. So you also have your blacklist and your other list, which we're going to go through now. Let's see if we can, there we go. So don't change the page now. There we go. So you can, it did. Sorry guys. Okay, so as you can see, also you have your blacklist or your allow list itself. This gives you that capability of maybe adding certain registrations to say that they are allowed. And if there's somebody that is not allowed, it will, you can put them onto a blacklist. Or if you're in a community area and you're looking for a specific vehicle, maybe some guy drove over the neighbor's cat, as an example, and now the whole neighborhood is looking for where's that vehicle or who's that vehicle, but they don't know when the vehicle's driving around. You can obviously put their registration into a blacklist, put it into the camera or into the software itself, and then let it pick up the vehicle and let you know. So we also have that capability of exporting that file. So you export that list, it will create a normal Excel list with the number of vehicles. So from vehicle 1, vehicle 2, vehicle 3, whatever you've listed. And then for also the number plate. So this works on blacklist and whitelist. Then you have your group. Is it a blacklist vehicle? So it's a 0. If it's allowed, it's a 1. If it's others, then you can just leave it out. So also your time, your format itself, when you want it to be granted access and when you don't want it to be granted access, or how long you want it to grant access. So all that capability is there. And then obviously you just import it back into the system and it will start keeping you a list here. Okay, so that's on the VCA. That gives you that capability. Very straightforward, very easy to be able to use. So there's quite a bit more that we can do with it. It can be pulled into, like I said, multiple different ways. And there's a lot of applications where this can be used. All right. So the next up will be our Q&A and a little bit down the rabbit hole. So if for those of you who would like to stay behind, by all means, I'm just going to be stopping the recording here. And there we go.